The government is being urged to immediately reform laws and funding for the greyhound sector. It comes amid concern around corporate governance at the Irish Greyhound Board, with opposition TDs claiming they fear for the future of the industry unless something changes soon. A former director of the Greyhound Board says the government must address how it appoints people to the state agency. Our reporter Barry Linehan has more as he continues his look at Ireland's dog business. Barry, yesterday we were hearing how greyhounds are being given Viagra and cocaine and travel sickness tablets, among other things, ahead of races. Now, who's in charge of this business, of this industry?
The Irish Greyhound Board, or Board na Gun, is the regulatory body for Irish greyhound racing. It's a semi-state agency, and since 2001 it's received €174.5 million in taxpayers' money. In October's budget it was allocated €16 million. That's over €300,000 every week in 2017. Board na Gun falls under the aegis of the Minister for Agriculture, Michael Creed, and his junior, Andrew Doyle.
And who's in charge of the Irish Greyhound Board?
Yeah, the chief executive is Geraldine Larkin. She's been in the position for over 2 years and has a salary of over €130,000.
And who's on the board of the semi-state? It is a semi-state agency.
Semi-state agency, Mary. The board's chair is Phil Meany, and Phil will be well known within political circles as the former election organiser for Phil Hogan. Mr Meany was instrumental in delivering Fine Gael 3 out of 5 seats in Carlow Kilkenny at the 2011 election. His appointment to the position that same year sparked controversy, as it came just hours before new government guidelines stipulating how chairs of semi-states had to be vetted by Oireachtas committees. The Taoiseach promised in the Dáil that Mr Meany would still go before the Oireachtas Agriculture Committee to ensure what he said, openness and transparency, but it never happened, although Mr Meany did eventually go before the Agriculture Committee and the Public Accounts Committee, along with other board members, on matters relating to the greyhound industry. Under the law that's in place at the moment, he has the job for life, should he wish.
And who else is there?
The Indicon report in 2014 into the greyhound sector identified what is said a skills gap amongst the directors of Board na Gun. In spite of this, last year, the then minister responsible for the industry, Tipperary TD Tom Hayes, reappointed 3 of those directors. One of those was Tipperary native Billy O'Dwyer. He was originally appointed to the board following lobbying by Michael Lowry in 2007. Mr Lowry later reached a deal to support the Bertie Ahern government. This is O'Dwyer's 3rd term on the board. Government guidelines stipulate how nobody should serve more than 2 terms on a state board.
And you've been speaking to a former director at Board na Gun. What did he tell you?
Yeah, Brendan Moore served as director between 2011 and early 2014. He resigned from the board because he felt his grave concerns over the alleged mismanagement of the greyhound industry weren't addressed. Now, these concerns centred around the artificial insemination of greyhounds. A law was in place ruling how the frozen semen of valuable greyhounds had to be destroyed after 2 years. In spite of this, and in spite of legal advice to the Irish Greyhound Board stressing how this rule should be applied, greyhounds of long dead dogs were still running in races. Now, the law was changed in 2014 to scrap the 2-year rule, but back in January, the Oireachtas Agriculture Committee called for this issue to be looked at and addressed again immediately. Now, the IGB says it has completed a review, a genetic review into artificial insemination, and any greyhound registered in the stud book at present complies with regulations.
Now, Mr Moore also had grave concerns about the IGB's investigation into an alleged fixed race in Dundalk in 2009 involving an imposter dog.
That's right, yeah. The state agency carried out what you could call 4 different inquiries into this incident, and according to Doyle documents I've obtained, this all cost €400,000. Mr Moore says he was uneasy when a 3rd investigation indicated that the alleged race fixing may have been more than just an isolated incident. But this report of this investigation, which I have, was never published. Mr Moore admits he got his job as a director through canvassing Fine Gael TDs, but he says when he brought his concerns about what I've been telling you there forward to Fine Gael TDs and ministers, he was ignored. The IGB claims Mr Moore's concerns are unfounded, but Mr Moore says the government needs to review how it looks at the greyhound industry.
you soon realise that the IGB operate in a protected environment, and if you have the support of the minister, the officials in the department, then really you can carry out your business whatever way you like, and no matter who raises concerns, they won't be listened to. Other stakeholders would have the same experience. And I think the record shows that this kind of protection for people is something that has caused an awful lot of damage to the industry. You know, people will say that raising concerns and making them public damages the greyhound industry, but my view is that the majority of the damage is done within the boardroom.
Of all the politicians you contacted, did any of them act upon your concerns?
The straight answer to that is no. I would have expected that there would have been actions. I think breaches of regulation by a board, ignoring them. There's a cultural problem within the greyhound industry that has to be sorted out, that's my opinion. That culture has to start in Kildare Street, and then it will, seep down through the whole industry. But until politicians and ministers stop treating the industry like some kind of a spot prize that people are given for a performance for a political party or because they're aligned to a political party, if we don't stop that, we won't have an industry.
And why do you think nobody listened to you?
I think if what went on in horse racing, or what went on in greyhound racing went on in horse racing, that there'd be uproar. The greyhound industry doesn't get the kind of respect it deserves. It's seen as a bit of a joke, I think. It's small money, and people don't realise how important it is to the people involved in it, and to the people that maybe give their lives to it, or the people that work as employees for the IGB. I think nobody gets the respect that they deserve.
That's Brendan Moore there, former director of the Irish Greyhound Board. And Barry, he mentioned his fears for the greyhound industry. You've been looking at the figures. What do they tell us? What is the health of this sport?
Well, the most recent figures we have are for 2014, and they show attendance at greyhound meetings in decline, dropping over 6% from the previous year. The average attendance at a greyhound meeting, 371. The tote figures, free fall, 48 million in 2007, 19.9 million in 2014. There were borrowings too at the IGB of almost €23 million, desperately close to their legal borrowing limit of €25 million. But the board has a number of complicated borrowing arrangements in place. I understand one of which, for over €12 million, comes up for review or repayment tomorrow, in fact. Much of the debt is associated with the building of Limerick Greyhound Stadium, a project whose merits was questioned by the Comptroller and Auditor General. Now, in a statement in the last short while, the IGB said it's projecting a more aggressive strategy, as it called it, in terms of getting rid of its debts, and this will involve asset disposal. The agency, as we know, is looking to sell off Harold's Cross Greyhound Stadium in Dublin. It also says the revenue returns from its track has improved, and it notes a number of achievements, including a Jumping in the City initiative involving show jumping events at its stadia, a television rights deal, and also a new pension arrangement as well. And they say their debt will be reduced by €2 million by the end of this month.
Why are you having to work off 2014 figures? Why are they the most recent?
As the Irish Greyhound Board still hasn't published its annual report for 2015. Now, semi-state agencies generally publish their annual reports by the end of the first quarter of the year, and this is December. The delay believed to be associated with High Court cases taken against the IGB. The semi-state agency says it hopes to publish its 2016 report by June of next year, subject to the Comptroller and Auditor General. Now, the Agriculture Minister Michael Creed today said that the IGB's report for 2015 will be presented to his department this week, and it was signed off by the agency's directors last Tuesday.
Politically, what's being said about this industry?
Politicians keen to focus on the area of anti-doping. The IGB keen to stress that last year fines as high as €7,500 were imposed by the agency for those found of substance misuse. But politicians from nearly every political party, including Fine Gael itself, have been asking questions of the Agriculture Minister Michael Creed and his junior Andrew Doyle in the Dáil about issues pertaining to the greyhound industry. And here are just some of those politicians.
My name is Michael Healy-Ray, and I'm a TD for County Kerry. And I have raised some of the issues that I have with the IGB. And I have to admit, and I don't ever like naming anybody, or I wouldn't, But I had correspondence with senior people in the IGB where my correspondence did not even get answered. When I was asking probing questions, I did not get the courtesy of a reply.
What needs to happen now?
We need people at the top of the IGB to maybe perhaps think about retiring.
Labour Senator Dennis Landy, you're from Tipperary, you have a deep interest in the greyhound industry.
The industry has come through a very rough patch. It's obvious to everybody looking in that the industry needs to be shaken up, and the current Minister with responsibility, Andrew Doyle, is bringing forward legislation early in the new year to bring back confidence into the industry for the trainers, for owners, for breeders and indeed for the punters. That confidence has been lost over the last number of years.
Martin Kenny, TD for Sligo, Leitrim, West Cavan and South Donegal and Sinn Féin Agriculture spokesperson.
Is it time to review the state's money and allocation towards the greyhound industry?
Well, I believe it is, and we had that before the Agriculture Committee this week, and we spoke about 80 million in total going to between the horse racing industry and the greyhound industry, and it's an awful lot of state money going into it. We see a very, very poor corporate responsibility around all of that. These issues need to be dealt with absolute haste, and I'll be telling that to the Minister. I believe next week we'll be debating in the Dáil the issues of the funding going to both Horse Racing Ireland and Bordnagon. Action needs to be taken to reform both of those organisations, and Bordnagon is certainly one that is very seriously under the microscope at the moment.
John McGuinness, TD for Carlow Kilkenny, former chair of the Public Accounts Committee. You would have had close dealings with the Irish Greyhound Board.
It was clear from the accounts that there are serious difficulties, financial difficulties within that board, and indeed within in the context of governance of the organisation.
How so?
The accounts were very much delayed in terms of their presentation each year. There is a significant debt due, and it seems now that the government continue to bail out the greyhound industry in spite of the fact that there are mounting debts and that there is very poor accountability. Is this semi-state agency effectively using public money, in your opinion? The agency is being kept alive by taxpayers' money, and that is a questionable position, for any agency to be in. And in spite of getting significant monies from the taxpayer, they are still unable to meet their commitments, and its credibility is now at stake. Indeed, I would suggest that financially, its future is at stake.
And that was John McGuinness ending that report from Barry Lenehan. More on the greyhound industry tomorrow.